הכלים הוא מבחינת העיר מקיף דווקא. I've been in agreement with that, so we'll continue. Prior to this, we just finished saying that in fact, the ultimate madriga of the makif does not express itself in the world. It has no shaykhs to world. We discussed this principle. This is the Indian Holocaust as it is in its own reality, not how it affects the world. And we already actually presented this with Mishalim, that even in our own experience, there are things that we're aware of by being aware of how they are at their own reality, not how it affects our practical world. And this is what the Rebbe is saying, that the Tehiri law, it's called Tehiri law, the upper level of the makif. This is the great encompassment before the kav, before the attempt to bring things down into world, as they are at the divine level itself. This does not relate to world. The expression in the Maimon is "Ein shayches Elohim." It can't relate to world. And we discussed, explained, in order to relate to world, there has to be an intent in this expression. But since at this level is not an intended gilui, it is the reality itself as it is unto itself, therefore the world is not recognized from there. And thus, from this super madrega, nothing comes forth in an expressed manner, because this madrega is all on an internal basis, so to speak, for internal consumption, expressing the way the things are at a higher level in itself, rather than how it can affect world. And thus, at the fourth line, which we learned already, in the middle of the fourth line, in some of the ways the Rebbe says, from this does not come forth a ha'ora, any kind of expression, begilui, in an expressed manner, because this has no cognizance of anything external to its own reality. And as we already discussed, that in fact, in the human being himself, there is a similar level. And we also explained that the reason there is this type of a level that is completely into itself and has no intent to express itself. It's a very important aspect in this level. In that this represents its own reality. We have Misholim from this, and I'll repeat or present another kind of mashal. If someone is learning and is learning something challenging, but what entices him to get into it and to explain it and open it up and show its depth is only if he is also teaching it to someone else. In other words, a challenge or bringing it out and having somebody else explain it and understand it, this is what draws it out of him. So even though he really does understand it, but there's an important thing that's missing. He does not appreciate its significance unless he can do something with it. Recognizing its significance on its own, just because he recognizes it, does not seem to be effective, which means that he does not really appreciate what he's got. Something that is of real significance is recognized and has an effect internal in the place where it is, without having to justify its presence by affecting something external. And this is what the Rebbe is saying. The reason Madrigi was called Tehiri Lo Yigul HaGodesh Lifnei HaKaf. Its significance is by virtue of what it is unto itself.
So
not by its effect on the world. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so just to be clear, this was in contrast to the what can be communicated in the way something becomes more clear when it's communicated. This is not for public consumption. This is never communicated outwardly. Is that correct?
No, it's not. It's not correct.
Yeah.
It can be communicated outwardly, but its communication outwardly does not enhance its presence. It's present is very much satisfied to be where it is. You could draw from it. This is an additional inyan.
You can draw from it and you can also communicate it, but it is not strengthened or clarified by being communicated.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
It's not dependent on this effect that it has as external. And as we already discussed, and we said that the human being is a real divine creation. so that everything that we are discussing in the general divine presence in the world is also found in the human being. And that is that in the human being there is a certain consciousness, a certain awareness, a certain sense of value. That is significant, sufficient and significant within itself, not for the purpose of expressing it and having others benefit from this knowledge. The human being, his understanding, his seichel phenomenon, is of value and of significance right there in itself. He is not learning in order to be able to explain something. He is learning in order to understand it for himself. And understanding for himself means to identify that which he already knows and identify it at the seichel level. Even though he knows it already, but he wants it to identify it on the seichel level. And this inyan that he wants to identify on the seichel level is a reality in and of itself. Not because as a result of that he can explain it to others. This is illustrated by the fact that Chassidus speaks about what's called his boinenus. Okay, I didn't touch upon it before, and now we'll get into it slightly. Chassidus speaks about his boinenus. His boinenus means intellectual reflection. Delve deeply into that which you already understand. The word his boinenus comes from the word bino, tvuno. Delve into that which you already understand and just reflect on it directly. Reflect on it to recognize the significance of what it contains. Connect to it through your seichel, rather than through your emotion, but connect to it from the seichel perspective, by recognizing its significance at the seichel level. This is his boinus. And the Chassidus explains that the real midos, attributes, or emotional expressions, the most significant are those that are created as a result of his boinus. His boinus means that the person delves deeply with his havana, with his seichel, into that which he already understands, and reflects on it, and recognizes and experiences the significance and the depth and the richness in that which he understands. And that expresses, that it reveals a certain emotional aspect, a connection of a deeper level. This is boinanus. Is a reflection into that which one already understands. So if he understands what is he reflecting in, he's reflecting of this, where to recognize the truth of where this comes from. How true is this? How rich is it? His bonus is not just to have a clarity. But delve deeply and says, this is of such purity, and you want to get into it. This is bonus. Therefore, in his bonus, one steps into a concept, an insight that cannot be expressed in words in seichel. He gets into that which is higher than seichel. Which is called the makif element. He reflects on the true significance of that which he understands. This is higher than the practical aspect in the human being, and it is higher than the functional aspect in the world. And as we explained, this is a very important aspect in the whole creation, so that the creation is not only functional, but it has a certain internal reality of its own. This is not for functional purposes. This is taught in the fourth line. In the shachos and hoyilomis. In the shachos and hoyilomis, its union is not to affect the world. And its union is not to express itself, but to have this truth there. Okay. Hello, do I still have you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, very good. the screen goes blank, so I don't know. Okay. And now we're going in the next stage. At the end of the fourth line and summer base. Omnom, however, in truth. Have you already delved into the word omnom? Omnom means however in truth. And we explained what is the meaning of the word omnom, however in truth. The concept of talking about true. We're talking about a true expression. In truth means how it is in the source itself. Yodua it is now. The radio also pointed out the expression Yodua it is known. What does it mean it's known? It's known only if you talk about it, if you learn about it. Because Yodua it is known in its own. This it is known, again, is an allusion to the principle that in fact we are aware and know of the truth before we identify it. There's an neshama knowledge in a human being. This neshama knowledge is extremely effective. Perhaps on two levels. Number one, on the lower level, perhaps it is that which is enticing, which creates curiosity in a person. He sees, he knows there is more to know. And then there is a deeper effect of the neshama knowledge. That when he knows, when he actually understands things, he knows and he senses that what he knows is not just based on the arguments and the proofs that he had used to express it, to reveal it. But it is, he knows it in its source. He knows how true it is because of the divine will that it should be. This is your dua. It is inherently known. Just to express it, and it's very important for us to relate to this. when we observe the world and we see all the various things in the world, we know, for example, the world cannot survive without the sun presence, the sun rotation, light and warmth and so forth, and air and everything else that goes into the functional world. And we are, as much as we understand about it, we're constantly explaining the effect of all the things that we're observing, how each one is contributing to the world. Then there is the Omnam Yodua aspect. The Omnam Yodua aspect is that we recognize that all that knowledge that we're identifying in our observation in the world is only an external, a superficial view of things. There's a truth behind it. The truth behind it is not that this is the way it works, but this is what expresses its own truth. This is the way it should be, this is the way it is on a conceptual level, not because it's necessary at the practical level. On the very conceptual level, the way pointed out that on a conceptual level, things are as perfect as they can possibly be. They conceptualized from the Neshama truth. At the conceptual level, this is how things are. This is your dua. It is known within the conceptual level itself. That's why it's omno. It's based on the truth itself. And what is your dua? And what is the truth? It is known, the shoyrej hakelim, that the source and the root of kelim, hu mibchinas ho'ir makiv dafka. It is from the bechina, from the aspect and from the truth of the presence of the Eir Makiv, of the Eir Makiv. You just finished saying that the Eir Makiv is something which is super worldly, yet the Kelim, which is an important part of world, Kelim is the means by which we know things in the world. Just to illustrate, even though Seichel is a neshama cognizance, for us to know things, we have to put the Seichel in words. You cannot think without words. So in our Seichel process, there is the words which is the keli for the Seichel. Means by which we become aware in the world in Seichel, of the Seichel on the worldly level. These words are the kelim for the Seichel. The means by which we can express the Seichel and know the Seichel in our conscious level in the world. This ability to bring down the Seichel into the worldly level and to express it in kelim, in words, what's called oisies. This ability is ho mi bechinas, and in the fifth line, mi bechinas or makiv tafka. It is, that ability is mi bechinas, is sourced and is the effect of the Oyer Makiv aspect rather than the Seichel itself. It is not the Seichel that itself, the concept that forces itself out to come in the Kelim. It is the Oyer Makif. It is the super consciousness, recognition of the truth of the Seichel. This is where the Kelim originate, and this is how come Kelim are present. The reason that we can express the Seichel in words, which is a little bit of a shocking statement. The reason we can express the Seichel in words, it's not because we reflect on the Seichel and find ways to express it in the world. The reason we can express the Seichel in words is because we recognize the Seichel at a deeper level than the Seichel itself. Recognize the source of the Seichel the way it is in the Oyer Makif, the way it is on a higher level and higher truth. This is why we can express it in words. Clearly, this requires some kind of an explanation. What do we mean by this, and how come this is true? So we have plenty of things that we discussed that can be used as the demonstration of the muscle for this union. At the simplest level, and the most, something is closest to us and most clearly expressed. We all understand, as we spoke many times, that a table has a very clear functional purpose. But then when we reflect on it, we see that actually the table expresses the significance of the home itself. It is not just a functional aspect. The home itself, at the highest and the most subtle level, comes to expression via there being a table. This is where the Kelim are representative and reveal the Oyer Makif aspect. The Kelim reveals that there is something more significant to the home than its practical use. This is why, as mentioned many times, when people get together and they want to experience the togetherness and their interaction and their significance of their friendship, they sit around a table. Not just sit around, they sit around a table. The table represents the yin that they are contained within a home. They're all together in one reality. The table alludes the makif that encompasses them all together. So that the table reveals and is sourced in the makif and that which encompasses them all. All right. It is okay. I think we expressed it, and if we're ready to go, continue, right? And we're now in the middle of the fifth line. Okay, it's not getting any easier. And as it says in Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim, by the way, is a sefer of the Arizal. the Ishabus HaKelim, that the forthcoming of the Kelim, what brings the Kelim out? Again, what is Kelim? At our level, Kelim are the words with which you express a seichel. And we already pointed out that there is a phenomenal cognizance in the fact that you can express a seichel in words, because seichel itself is higher than words. Is Habas HaKelim, the creation and the forthcoming of the Kelim. What effectuates, in our terms, the words? Who alidei, it is as a result, hakos. Hakos means the hit, the touch. Oir makiv v'oir pnimi. Where the oir makiv touches the oir pnimi. Let me translate these words. This is something very foreign to us. Oir makif, you know what that we have delved into that. Oir pnimi means the oir pnimi that can and seeks to be contained in a kelim, in words and in specific thoughts. That's called oir pnimi. Logic, seichel, oir pnimi, oir that can be carried with words. The oir pnimi is sourced in the oir makif. As we pointed out many times, that yes, indeed, when you have a seichel, you can prove the seichel, you can prove this truth. But the significance of the seichel is not merely in its proof. It is the concept, the truth of the concept itself. The concept itself is sourced in oir makif, in a bigger reality. Put it bluntly, we know that in order that the world is a divine creation, the world did not come to be by itself. It was created. This in that it was created is an imperative, because where does the world come from otherwise? That's a logical thing. However, when we observe the world and we actually function in the world, we're not functioning in a world that is purely world, and that was created to be world, like if a table is a board on four legs. And we said many times, when you sit around the table, you don't sit around a board on four legs. We sit around the concept of a thing, which is contained in Gashmit in a board on four legs. But this is not what brings us together. So there is the makif aspect.
Excuse me. Time check, Rabbi.
A time check already. Let me just
Can
finish.
you believe it? Sure, 10-2.
There is the makif element. Even though it is expressed in a simple thing in the keli, in a simple seichel, a table. It couldn't be anything more down to earth. The real significance of this table is the makif aspect that it brings along. And it is the unification, bringing together Makif and Pnimi. This is where the Keli surfaces from. Just a few more words, and then and the real source of the Kelim is altogether from the Makif rather than from the Pnimi. The real source, to put it bluntly, the real source of a table is the concept of a table rather than the services that a table provides. This is to be completed next time. Just wanted to bring it up. Yes? Okay. Time check. Take glasses off.
This last comment by the table is based on the concept, not the function it provides. So that's coming to illustrate or makif touching or pnimi. What happened there?
That's
How did
right.
They relate? Yeah.
That's right. It's coming to it and demonstrate that even though this is an pnimi, it's a keli, but what the keli represents and why the significance of the keli is the makif that's in it. Is its source in the makif.
But without the makif, you would not create a table.
Without the makif, you create a table. It wouldn't be a table. It would be a board and 4 legs. In other words, it would be just the practical usage rather than its significance. You would not call a person to come. Let's talk around the table.
How you doing, John?
I'm sorry I interrupted you. So I'm just.
So wait, it would exist, but it would not. It would exist, but it would just be functional, and would lack the sort of connection to the human dignity. Would that be a way to say it?
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Because
as I said, you would not think of inviting somebody. Let's talk. Let's sit down around the table.
Why? Wait. Well, I mean, it would still serve practical use. There's an expression in the world, necessity is the mother of invention. So human beings have all their stuff, they need somewhere to put it down. So now you have a practical reason to invent a table, any kind of tools. So, we're walking, we're talking, let's sit down and talk. I mean, I'm just trying to get clear on what's providing what the makif is contributing, I guess, or what we would have without.
There's a very common expression which I'm sure you know, the round table discussion. The round table discussion. What is in that expression? People are sitting around. Why the round table? The table creates a central focus of all the people around them. Even though the people sitting around talking to each other, not to the table. Somehow the table is significant, and it brings their relationship to some kind of a focus. Just want to finish this. And this focus is representing, Abraham, this focus is representing that they are there together not merely to discuss a certain point, but their togetherness is a reality of togetherness. First of all, they're together, and then they're discussing also certain interests. It is not the discussion that brings them together, it is the togetherness. This is what the table represents.
Okay. So, and we got into that because this is the meeting point between Makif and Pnimi, that you'll end up with a real table, yeah?
That's right. The Makif and Pnimi, this is what brings it out in a table, in a keli. And the Rebbe says that principally the kelim represent the Makif aspect rather than the Pnimi aspect. The table represents the togetherness rather than the practical service it provides, although it does provide the practical service. All right, so Mienes did a good job.
Okay.
I have a question.
Else?
No, go ahead, Shmuley.
I was just wondering about why it's called hitting. That's all.
Oh. You're right, it's an interesting expression. Hakos a makif be'pnim.
Hakos, what does it mean?
Hakos, the hit.
The hit?
Hit.
Hint.
A makif hitting the pnimi.
Ah, okay.
4793 to watch it head down to see the volume and get your ID. When you're ready on that.
Can you please mute your phone?
Okay. Thank you.
Whose phone is that? Is that Avraham?
Shlomo, I think you can be the administrator, mute people.
The reason it's called hakos hitting is that in fact the pnimi is not really capable of accepting fully the makif. To the extent that, going back to Ramisholi, when we speak about the makif, the pnimi gets lost. You're not even conscious of the table at all. It is a togetherness, as we said before. So if it's a togetherness, why do you have a table? The togetherness, you could sit or stand, is for the matter of fact, together and talk to each other. But then the makif would not have a place of expression. When is a makif find a place of expression? It is when the kelim, when the means by which that identifies their togetherness, it's identifiable. And the reason it's called Hakoah is Hakoah means the hit. The hit means the effect, the arousal. The Makib says, yes, you have all these utensils and all these things, but really you're missing the point. You're forgetting about the higher and the most significant aspect. When you get involved in the practical aspect, you may lose sight of what the overall picture is. And the market does not allow you to do that.
And it always reminds you by striking you. They're not gentle reminders. There's always a degree of tension, conflict.
Right. What's going on? Where are you?
Where are we? What are we doing here? So there's that need. So you're looking, and then you're struck by a new insight.
That's right.
There's a lacking and then a fulfillment, I guess.
That's right. You're standing there and you're talking, says, let's sit down. Let's sit down on the table. In order to capture the spirit of our togetherness, let's sit down on the table.
And that's because you're struck by a greater import. You're struck by the depth, the richness of what's
That's right.
But again, going to Shmuli's question, that's not a sort of gentle realization. That is has some kind of sudden impact or some kind of discomfort, even. Correct?
Not a discomfort, but it's making a point. Hey, you're missing the whole point. You're losing your togetherness.
Right, but it's not graduated. It's not gradual.
No, it's not. That's right. Suddenly it's being like, come on, let's break out of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, I have a quick question. We started the shiur with Tehira Ila, which was defined as the upper level of the Makif that does not relate to world.
Right.
So we're talking about a reality outside of the world. And then we said that the human being can relate to that level and benefit from it, from the knowledge given by his neshama, and he can identify that level with his seichel. So here there's some kind of a contradiction.
Absolutely. This is why the Rebbe begins this part by these words which we have emphasized. I'm reading now the fourth line from the top at the end. Omnom, however, in truth, Yodu it is known, the Sheresh HaKelim, that the source of Kelim is Mepchinas Makiv. There could be nothing more Pnimi than Kelim. And actually, this is sourced in Makiv.
Okay.
It seems like
One second. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So just want to bring this out. You have a feast. The feast represents some kind of a great event. And all the people that are at this event are invited to because they have a particular relationship to the event. A wedding, a bar mitzvah, whatever it is. So you will celebrate this event by making a feast. At this feast, you create seats for every guest. And every guest has his own plate, his own place, where he's being served from the feast. If a person is invited to a feast and he was told that the food is at the smorgasbord, there is no individual service. That would diminish the feast aspect, the unity among the people. That's a cop-out. Does not really present the union that this is a feast. Although, when you do have a feast, when you represent by giving individual places, individual service. That seems to be counterintuitive. Let them all eat from the same table instead of, and they say, no, let each one have his own. How is it that each one has his own? That's when you're expressing that this is a common feast. When each one gets his own portion, that's when you're expressing that each one is a welcome guest at this feast. This is the Oimaki effect represented through the individual portion.
what is that? What was that last sentence? That the individual portion does what?
The individual person represents the Oimaki, the togetherness, the effect of the fact that they're all together in one great feast. That's why each one has its own portion. Each portion is affected by the oimaki, but the overall meaning of this feast.
So what's the point here? That there needs to be this unique delivery one by one, and that indicates the klal. What happened?
That's right.
I'm not getting what. Oh, okay.
The oimaki is expressed by this individuality. Okay.
Okay. Just getting back to the striking there. It also seems like masculine, feminine, like the table, the kalim, the women are very, a man has a bag, but like a woman has a handbag and it's got little details to it and twirly things and little fringes on it, and they'll talk about it endlessly. It's just an interesting difference, right? If a man got into that stuff, it would be trivial, or he'd be a dandy or something. But for the woman, this is like appropriate, but yet it seems besides the point. It's interesting, and it seems to relate to what we're talking about. You have the table and its functionality, and you have details about the table, and then there's the actual makif, the actual point of the table.
I'm not catching the point.
Why? Okay, so why is it that? My question, I guess, is why are the men sort of focused on, let's say, the essence, perhaps, or something more stripped down? He has a bag, so the bag has to be functional and working. But the woman has a bag, and it's got all these details, and she'll embellish it, and it seems to relate to what we're talking about here, a sort of a makif and a pnimi, but maybe it's an unrelated question I'm just thinking about. Maybe it's unrelated.
We can find related, but it's a very broad, far off principle. Maybe sometime we'll touch on it. Yes.
Okay.
We're saying what's it called? The pnimi, we said is the aspect of the board and four legs. But the aspect of the kli comes mainly from the makif. So if the pnimi is the aspect of the board and four legs, isn't that more closely related to the kli than the conceptual aspect?
Okay, so this is what we are struggling to point out. That yes, it would seem that way, but it's not true. Why is it not true? What's missing in it? What's missing in it when you talk about the table, a board and four legs, you're not talking about a keli, you're talking about the means of using something. Let me, again, to drink water from a cup is a practical necessity. But then the most important, we're pointing out that the drinking water from a cup is not because of necessity, but because that's a sense of dignity. Lahabdul, the cat drinks water from the ground or a basin.
Mm-hmm. Necessity.
So the cup is what expresses the dignity of the human being. It's not the practical necessity.
It's more compelling. The dignity is more compelling than the necessity to bring about the best.
The dignity is more expressive of what a human being is than the practical use.
Okay.
So this is what Keli is actually rooted from the oil makif at the oil makif level. And as we brought from Eitz Chaim, Kelim are created alidei hakos and makif befni by the oil makif, hitting the epnimi. And this is where the kelim are created. We continue on. And really, even though it gets created under the certain circumstances, but principally, their representative, their source, they represent the makif rather than the Ikeshoshim. There has to be both a makif and a pnimi in order to create a keli. But the principle that they represent, the principle of the keli is the makif aspect. This is what we just finished saying. The principle of the Keli is not the ease of how you use it, but rather the dignity, that it comes with it. Okay, now we continue. It says in Terei Habir, Habei Diabir V'Shmachus. Okay, that's an address in Terei. Anybody can look it up. Now the Rebbe says further. V'zehu sha'akeli hi agula. This explains the fact that the keli is agula. The keli is circular. Usually keli is round. Even the Gashmias, the keli is round. And the Rebbe says that the principle of the keli is round is actually representing the spirit that created the keli. The spirit that created the keli is a makif, surrounding. This is why when the keli comes in presented in a Gashmic form, it is round. Because it's sourced in something that's circular. That's encompassing rather than square or any other thing. The Shoshu who made a makif, because its source is from the makif. Makif means circular. Isn't it interesting? The reason that a keli is round is because it's conceptualized actually at the makif level. Not at the pneumic level, at the practical level, you need a plate, you need a place. It's conceptualized at the makif level. All right, we struggle through this. I say, wow. Let's continue. This explains elsewhere. Rechi, you're speaking on the loudspeaker, Rechi. Excuse me. Therefore, according to this, I'll be saying that the kelim are actually sourced in the Oyer Makif. Therefore, you can further elaborate on this and bring out a very interesting point. The koyach habitul shel hakeli. That the koyach, and the ability of the beetle of the keli, we spoke about beetle, a little bit while back. The principle of the koyach habitul shel hakeli is in simple terms, we are speaking with words. As we are speaking with words, we are totally unaware of the actual words that we are using. They're totally insignificant. they get lost in the spirit of what they're expressing. That's a very small demonstration of the beetle of the Keli. The beetle of the Keli, beetle, the ability that the Keli should get lost in the concept is mehoer makib. It is because of the makib that the words represent. It is not in the concept that they express, rather the makib from which they're sourced. And the Rebbe continues and he says, Mebechinas ha'yigol hagor. The makif is referring to the eagle hagor. This is where the beetle of the Keli comes from. From the bechina of the eagle hagor. Back to our moshel. Every person making a speech. And he has all kinds of rich expressions in his speech. If what you are taking away from the speech is the expressions with which he is bringing it out, rather than the message, then the speech is lacking the oil that it's supposed to bring out. When you walk away from a big speech, you should be walking away with the concept that the speech represents, rather than the richness of its expression. How well he spoke in terms of the expression. So the beetle of the Keli is from the makif. The principle, the concept that was expressed, this is what the Kelim are about, rather than the structure itself. And the Rebbe says, this makif refers to Mebchinas ha'yigol hagor. This makif is not the concept, back to our Moshe, the concept that's being expressed, but rather the principle behind the concept. Why are we talking about this in the first place? This is what the focus is. All right. So we are learning these supreme inyonim, and we're translating it at our level. And the reason that we are able to translate on our level is that, in fact, everything in our world is reflective of the way it is Lamayla. In the human being's world. All right. I think that this would be it for this morning. Is that correct?
Shkoya.